In a heartbreaking turn of events, the world number 2 himself will not be playing at the US Open this year. We all saw what went down at the French Open, but until now, both Alexander Zverev and his fans had hoped that we'd see him play again. In today's video, we're breaking down exactly what happened to the player and why he's ditching one of the biggest tennis events of the year. First up, what went down at Roland Garros? Everything at the French Open was going exactly to plan until the semi-final. Two of the biggest players in the world, namely Zverev and tennis legend Rafael Nadal, were battling it out on the court. It was an important match for the German since, despite being ranked only second in the world, he's still fighting for his first ever Grand Slam title, and Roland Garros was essential to that. He had already lost the first set 7-6, and Nadal was ready to break the tie as fiercely as possible. But then disaster struck. The player immediately dropped to the ground on his right ankle, and if his screams of pain were anything to go by, it wasn't the type of injury you could fix with a band-aid. He was immediately taken off the court in a wheelchair, and sadly had to retire from the match instantly. A while later, he finally made his way back out to shake hands with his competitor, and officially conceded the match, sending the Spanish player straight to the finals. So, what actually happened? Later on, Zverev finally took to Instagram to break the heartbreaking news to his followers and bring them up to speed on what actually happened to his ankle. In a cheerful picture of him standing next to a plane, the 25-year-old's leg was wrapped in a cast, and he was leaning on a pair of crutches. So clearly, it wasn't one that he could have walked off. In his caption, he told his followers that he was on his way back to his native Germany, and that based on the first set of medical checkups, he had several torn ligaments in his right foot, but he still seemed hopeful. He added that he would be flying back home for more examinations and to figure out how fast he could recover. This clearly wasn't going to happen in time for Wimbledon 2022, and he ended up having to sit out of the tournament. But his situation didn't stop him from taking out a moment to thank his fans for all their support and for being there for him in such a tough situation. But was there any hope for Flushing Meadows? After sitting out Wimbledon, fans were dying to see the world number 2 back at the court at the US Open in August. And for the most part, it did seem like he'd be making a return. As he went through surgery and then continued to work his way to complete recovery, he didn't rule out the possibility of making it to the court. The Tokyo 2022 gold medalist had full faith that he could make it to Flushing Meadows, even though he said it would be very, very close. He was open on social media about his recovery journey, with the extensive treatment and physical therapy that comes with such a serious injury. He said it might be difficult for him to win, but he was sure he'd at least make it to New York. He has a great history with the US Open, where in 2020, he made it to the final, but was beaten by Dominic Thiem over 5 grueling sets. With the stellar Olympics performance under his belt, fans were ready to see him grab his maiden Grand Slam. During the course of his recovery, he seemed accepting of his accident and hopeful for the next win. He admitted that professional sports are always dangerous, and incidents like this are part of every game, but he saw himself making it through. Zverev also talked about the rigorous but carefully planned exercise regime he and his team were following, even saying he was used to getting the maximum from his body in every session, but now had to tone it down. Moving on, it looks like it just wasn't meant to be. With the final slam of the 2022 season growing closer and closer, the tennis world had their eyes on the Hamburg native, wondering if he could actually make it. Things seemed hopeful for a while, but everyone's hopes were crushed when Zverev finally announced that he would not be able to participate in the tournament. Previously, he had declared that just being 100% fit wasn't enough for him. He would only return to the sport when he felt confident enough in his abilities and his ankle to actually win. It seems that even though the player seems to be doing much better physically, he doesn't feel ready enough to blow the competition out of the water. He probably also suffered from a lack of practice, since he was so focused on fixing his ankle these past few months. Officials also announced that his place in the tournament would be taken over by the American player, Stefan Kozlov. Fans were devastated when the news dropped, and they're also worried the player might not make it to the ATP Finals, where he currently stands 7th in the ranking. Because of the US Open, he also stands to drop a huge 720 ranking points, potentially losing his position at the top. And he's not the only one missing out. Another American player has also withdrawn from the US Open, namely Riley Opelka. Jack Sock has since taken his place to make it into the main draw of the competition. Opelka didn't give any reasons as to why he was going to sit it out, but given his recent injury, the move doesn't exactly come as a surprise. He also sat out the last two Masters 1000 tournaments in Canada and Cincinnati, since he lost his Canadian Open finalist points. And if we look back to the world's top 10 male players, another big name will be missing out on the US Open, but not because he withdrew. Tennis fans will be familiar with Novak Djokovic's refusal to get the COVID-19 vaccine, and now it's keeping him from his career goal of the most Grand Slam singles titles. He won his 21st big title at Wimbledon this year, and while he had his fingers crossed about the situation, he is officially not participating in the US Open. Just like in Melbourne, any visitors entering the US by air have to show full proof of COVID vaccination, as laid down by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and Djokovic has been very vocal about his decision to not get the jab. He even missed out on the last Masters event, namely the Rogers Cup, for the same reason. The player stands by his principle that his decisions about his own body are more important than any professional title, but at this point, his stubbornness might be costing him a lot more. And now, for the latest in the tennis world. First up, Zverev is doing his bit to help people. While he was away from his sport and recovering from his horrifying injury, Zverev was putting his time and energy into more noble pursuits as well. The player announced in August that he was officially launching the Alexander Zverev Foundation, which will serve to support children with diabetes, along with those suffering from the condition in developing countries. The foundation's mission is to provide medication and other support to those with type 1 diabetes and help prevent type 2 diabetes by raising awareness and helping people to live healthier lives. The medication will include both insulin, an expensive drug, and other life-saving medication. The German revealed that he started the foundation because of his own personal struggle with type 1 diabetes, and he wants to encourage other children with the condition to follow their dreams. He ended the announcement with a simple quote: "The only limit is the one you set yourself." After all, that's the kind of attitude that gets you to world number 2. Next up, Nick is in trouble. The tennis world's resident bad boy, Aussie Nick Kyrgios, had landed himself in quite the legal mess. In the 2022 Wimbledon final, where the player lost to Novak Djokovic, he accused a fan of being drunk and yelling at him during the match. He claimed that she made him lose his focus during the serve, accusing her of looking like she'd had about 700 drinks. Apparently, she kept speaking to him from the front row when he had the ball, messing up his concentration. Now, the fan, Anna Palace, has announced that she'll be taking legal action against the player, instructing her lawyers to hit him with defamation proceedings. She went on to call it a reckless and entirely baseless allegation. And finally, the world number 1 is not putting up with any discrimination. Iga Swiatek, the reigning women's world number 1, is questioning the rules set in tennis for men and women. The player called the balls being used at the US Open horrible and was upset about the fact that men and women still use different balls. The heavier balls are kept for the men, as women in the past suffered elbow injuries, but Swiatek believes that the current female tennis players are strong enough to handle them. Tennis isn't known for having equal grounds for both genders, but maybe that's about to change. That's a wrap for this video. Who are you most excited to see at the US Open? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.